Welcome to the Diabetes Podcast, where real stories meet real science, helping you take charge, not just take medicine. Today we're talking about something bigger than blood sugar numbers, how to stay focused on healing when life feels heavy. From caregiving and grief to financial stress, real life doesn't pause for diabetes. Chronic stress can hijack the nervous system, worsen insulin resistance, drive cravings, and make doing all the right things feel impossible. But focus isn't a personality trait. It's a finite resource we can protect. Whether you're pursuing type 2 remission or managing type 1 or other forms of diabetes, you're not broken, you're not failing, and you're not alone. Healing is still possible, especially when we protect our focus. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Diabetes Podcast. I'm Richie.
And I'm Amber. And today I'm going to start the podcast because there's something I've been sitting with for a while. And it's the fact that I don't recognize my country right now. And I'm not saying that lightly. I'm not saying that for any reason other than the fact that it is true for me. And watching what is happening in real time, the violence, the dehumanization, the eroding of trust, the sense that people can be harmed in the street and brushed aside as if their lives don't matter, it's all been deeply unsettling. It has affected my focus. It has affected my nervous system. It has affected how grounded I feel moving through my day. And I find myself in moments asking how I keep showing up to talk about diabetes when the world feels like it's on fire. Because it can feel tone deaf. It can feel small. It can feel like the analogy that we used before, rearranging chairs on the Titanic as it is sinking. And I struggle at times when something much bigger is happening. But here's the truth that I keep coming back to, that this fracture in focus, this sense of being pulled in too many emotional directions at once, that is exactly what people with diabetes are living with every single day. And the realization in that is that speaking about this isn't a detour from the Diabetes Podcast. It is the Diabetes Podcast because diabetes doesn't happen inside of a vacuum separate from life and the living. Healing doesn't happen in a quiet, protected lab. And the need to take life-sustaining insulin or achieving the small percentage goal of type 2 remission does not wait until life is fair. And this brings to mind people very close to me. And I would like to start this with telling you about a few of them. So not to violate anyone's privacy, I might change names, but I want to talk about it because I am sure if you're listening, you can relate in some way. Because I talk to so many people who feel alone in their experience. And while everyone has their own experience, everyone has their own subjective reality, it's almost guaranteed that someone has experienced something similar. And you are never alone, no matter how lonely it may feel. The beautiful people I have worked with are facing very real challenges. So Vicky is caring for her husband with severe dementia, alone every day, no breaks, no relief. Her nervous system is constantly on high alert. Debbie's husband just had open heart surgery. Their world flipped in a day. Fear, exhaustion, no sleep, and now focused on recovery for him while continuing caring for her own health. And Judy just lost her job, and then her younger dog died suddenly. And if you've ever lost an animal companion, you know. Ron found out his business partner stole from him, and years of trust are gone. His sense of safety and stability shattered. Barb is struggling to get enough oxygen. Can you imagine just breathing is hard? These are not one-off people. This is not me picking those who are struggling the most. In fact, I didn't speak about a client who I believe has had the biggest challenge, bigger than the others combined. But this isn't about who has it the worst. This is to say that struggles are not unique. This is real life for a lot of people. And every single one of these people is also trying to either keep diabetes remission, keep their weight struggles in check, or manage their type 1 diabetes or other type of diabetes, making food decisions, getting the best quality sleep possible, moving their body when possible, and sometimes carrying the weight of feeling like they're failing, even when they're not. Sometimes questioning themselves because the system keeps telling them it should be easier. I am so proud of all of our people. So when I hear things like people just don't want it badly enough, or if they cared, they'd try harder, or they just need more discipline. I need you to hear me clearly. That narrative is not just wrong, it is cruel. Because what I see every day is not laziness. It is overload. So let's talk about overload. Let's talk about what actually happens in the body when life is heavy, when stress is constant. Not acute stress, not this short burst of stress, this ongoing stress. And your body can shift into survival mode. Cortisol rises, adrenaline rises. And cortisol isn't bad acutely. It helps you wake up. It mobilizes available energy. It keeps you alert during stress. The problem isn't cortisol rising acutely. The problem is when life stays heavy. The problem is when the signals never shut off. The body stays on edge because your body doesn't understand the difference between a physical threat and emotional overload. So it's not a mindset problem. This is biology playing out. These are the effects of chronic stress. And chronic stress can make insulin resistance worse. This raises blood sugar levels, increases inflammation, and can amplify cravings. This is what the brain does in trying to keep you alive. So when someone says, I don't understand, I'm doing everything I was doing before, and my blood sugar numbers are worse, often the piece of the puzzle that they're missing is that their nervous system has been hijacked by their experience of life. And here's the part we don't say out loud often enough. Type 2 diabetes remission requires relentless focus, not perfection or obsession, but protection. The reason for this is because when focus fragments, biology is what pays the price. So I'm going to talk about a really hard truth around focus, and that is that focus is not a personality trait, but rather a finite resource. And when life is loud, through grief, fear, caregiving, financial stress, betrayal, illness, that focus can get consumed by survival. And this doesn't mean that healing is impossible, but it does mean that healing has to be simplified. And one of the biggest mistakes I see is people trying to add more when life is already full. More tracking, what's the blood sugar, checking this, checking that, more rules around it all, finding that perfect supplement, taking more supplements, more perfection. And more times than not, that backfires. Because healing in chaos does not mean doing, this act of doing more. It means guarding the few things that matter most. And this applies to me too. And Richie can speak to this. There are days when I have to consciously refocus on my calling. Not because the world is okay, but because it isn't. Because if I let the noise pull me completely under, I cannot help anyone. And there's a phrase that I hear all the time, and I'm sure you've heard it. You cannot pour from an empty cup. But I think it's watered down because most people don't have an empty cup. They have a cracked one. They're still showing up, still functioning, still caring for others, but the leak is constant. And here's the truth that I had to sit with within myself. I cannot help people regulate their bodies if I refuse to ensure to regulate my own. I can't ask people to focus on healing if I don't model what refocusing actually looks like. So what does that mean in practical terms? It means acknowledging grief without letting it run the nervous system. It means letting anger exist without letting it hijack sleep, doom scrolling late at night, making movement still happen, making meals, still planning, whatever it is, even if it's just planning in that day, that one meal. It means choosing to anchor the body, even when the outside world feels unanchored. I'm not talking about bypassing reality, mind you. This is surviving reality. It is about what is. So I want to give you some practical strategies. I want to give you something concrete here, not as a checklist to judge yourself by, but some solid anchors. So anchor number 1 is to shrink the frame. So the frame is your model of the world, the way that you see it. So when life is overwhelming, stop looking to the future, like what should I be doing long term, and ask instead, what does today require? Today might require one balanced meal, one walk, one earlier bedtime, one boundary with the news, turning off the TV, putting down the phone. Healing happens in 24-hour blocks. Anchor 2 is to remove something called decision fatigue, because decision fatigue can kill focus. And this is why remission works best the more boring things are. Same breakfast, same grocery list, same movement window. Boredom is not failure. Boredom is stability. I do best when I get up right in the morning and I go out, put my clothes on and get out and exercise. It becomes exponentially harder to get that workout in as the day goes on. So I just do it before I can even think about it, as an example. And then anchor 3 is to regulate before you have some sort of learning around something. Regulate your body. So if your nervous system is dysregulated, no amount of learning about nutrition knowledge, for example, is going to land. So start here, protein and fiber early in the day. How can you make sure that happens? That could be your flaxseed with steel cut oats or groats, and getting light exposure, or like getting up in the morning and opening up the blinds, letting in the day. Gentle movement, slow breathing. These are not just little wellness extras. They are prerequisites for mind, mood regulation, and blood sugar control. And then anchor 4 is this idea that focus is an act in and of itself, an act of resistance. I want to say this clearly. Taking care of your body in a system that profits from your exhaustion is not selfish. It is defiant. Choosing sleep, choosing nourishment, choosing movement, these are acts of self-preservation, not indulgence. I stay focused, not because the world is okay. I stay focused because it isn't. because people with diabetes deserve someone who doesn't disappear when things get hard. And if you're listening to this feeling like your life is heavy, if you're grieving, scared, angry, exhausted, if diabetes feels like one more thing you can't afford to deal with, hear me. You are not broken. You're not weak. You're not failing. Healing is still possible. Type 2 diabetes remission is still possible. If remission is not possible in the setting of type 1 or other diabetes, support still matters. And focus, real focus, is not a luxury. It is a lifeline. If you need support beyond this podcast, we're here. You don't have to do this alone.
Amber, I want to just thank you for being vulnerable, for being willing to kind of put yourself out there in a way that maybe isn't as flattering as we would like. If you haven't picked up on it yet, Amber's got a tremendous heart for
Thank you,
people.
but this isn't a podcast about me. This is
It's not about you. What I'm trying to relay is that that even Amber, who is normally a just brings sunshine into every single room that she walks into, she gets down, she gets beaten up, and she gets just weighed down by a lot of the ugliness that is just constantly kind of blasted at pretty much everybody 24/7 these days. But we at the Diabetes Podcast would like to remind you that ugliness, particularly ugliness that's reflected in the media, whether it be the news, whether it be a lot of social media, that's not normal. When I leave the house and I go out and I interact with other humans, those interactions are not at all reflective of what is being broadcast to me and let's just call it sold to me as
and
normal.
I want to add that thank goodness I go outside of the home for work, at times, because it's that interaction with people across beliefs, across backgrounds, just peopling, as I say it, just being humans. You see the good, and I see so much, someone who stands for something that I am vehemently opposed to. And then I call to check up on their spouse, and they're in the background talking to the deer and the animals, trying to hand feed them like a male Snow White out there as I'm on the phone with his spouse. Like, it's just adorable. And I think it's so important to have that balance, because if you're in the vacuum of a news feed or a social media feed and don't have the ability to step out and people with people, you can get a lot of monovision. You can see things quite skewed. And it's not to say there aren't bad things happening. It's just what you choose to focus on. And when we talked about focus being a finite resource, and you really have to choose your focus and choose we call it the big chungus. And our big chungus is fighting.
So let's roll it back.
Yeah.
The first off, if you aren't aware, it's circa 2021, maybe.
Yeah, you have to explain that maybe.
There was this meme of a very large Bugs Bunny that was known as the Chungus. It was cool for about a week. And I really latched onto it. And then the more it became uncool and the more I used it, the more it irritated my kids, so that I just kept
Our
doing it and
kids.
all that. Yeah. And anyway, very old, not commonly used meme, large rabbit. Okay. Um, Type 2 diabetes remission is our chungus. And let me explain. As it relates to focus, there's an expression that says, if you chase two rabbits, you don't catch any.
Same as being dual yoked.
Yeah. So Amber and I had to pick a rabbit. And in the case of type 2 diabetes and prediabetes, the rate of incidence in the United States in the adult population is about 1 in 2, right? That's not a small,
include prediabetes and diabetes.
Yeah, that's not a small rabbit. That's a chungus. And that's what we're trying to do every single day. Every single podcast that we do is with the mission, the mindset that we as a nation, as a population, as humans, are struggling with a preventable and in many cases reversible disease. And that doesn't make any sense. So we have to ask ourselves very often, if I'm doing a thing that is affecting my mood, if I'm doing a thing that is affecting my mindset, and it's taking away from that mission, that chungus, if I'm not chasing that rabbit every single day, am I getting closer to the rabbit, or am I getting further away from the rabbit? Is this a behavior? Go ahead.
It's also opportunity loss, because every day we have the opportunity to impact lives. We have the opportunity to have someone not feel as alone. We have the opportunity to support people. We have the opportunity to be a guide and a resource. And I liken it to being the Coast Guard in a ship. And there are people out there with sharks swimming around, and I can reach out and grab people and rescue them from this huge ocean with the sharks swimming about. And I can't do that if I'm jamming out to the radio or listening to how bad the weather's going to get coming up in the future. It is about right then the people in the water trying to be saved from the sharks. And that brings me back to focus. And I think it's important to have whatever it is, your identity statement, your vision that brings you back into focus. That is your calling, your purpose, your mission, to bring you back when you kind of get off the rails,
yeah,
so to speak.
Or when just trying to get by, do the audit. Did I do something today that promotes healing? Did I do a behavior that makes my body more conducive or more hostile to hosting prediabetes or type 2 diabetes? And if you did,
the same can be for
win.
type 1, and the same can be for type 1 or other diabetes. I know that our focus is mainly type 2 diabetes remission, but I don't want to ostracize or not speak to the person who has autoimmune type 1 diabetes or other insulin requiring diabetes.
That's fair, but I think it's also fair to say that most of the behaviors that would benefit somebody that is struggling with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes are the same behaviors that are good for type 1 and just general
or anyone,
general population, period. What we're talking about, I kind of need to say something. At one point in time, we'd reached out to the VA about, possibly partnering, or at least saying, hey, we got this free podcast out there for people that are struggling. And what they came back with was, we're alternative medicine. So that's not going to work out from their standpoint. And I I took offense to that.
I took
What
offense to that as well.
Yeah, what
Mhm.
we're preaching is not it's not sold in a bottle. What we're preaching is if you look at the algorithm for the currently recommended best practices for how to treat type 2, or really it's prediabetes when it first rolls out, diet and exercise are kind of the big staples that your physician recommends prior to any kind of medical or medicine, intervention.
Yep.
And that's all we're talking about every day. Is just that, you know, if
But
it's
that's
not,
alternative
yeah,
medicine,
that's
apparently.
that's alternative medicine really kind of
Mhm.
speaks to, we talk about the diet, the diabetogenic environment, like, wake up folks, like, that's it. The environment is such that they're not going to really press the issue until you have full blown type 2 and will go on medication. Until before that, everything is, well, we need to watch this, or we need to be aware of it. Might want to diet or might want to eat, but nobody's going to make you heal. And the environment, left to its own, you know, is going
Devices.
to, yeah, it's going to continue to encourage sickness, to allow sickness to develop and to grow. And again, if you are focused on all of the chaos that is going on in all of the world, but probably not your hometown and probably not inside your house and all this other kind of stuff, you are going to miss the thousands of opportunities every single day to do something that makes you feel better, to do something that makes you move a little bit better, to help your digestive system, to lower your blood sugar, to do all these things. I feel like I'm just rambling at this point in time, but all of this is to say that healing is possible and is probable if you adopt the behaviors that put this disease into remission. Whether you actually achieve remission or not, it always gets better. Um, but it will not happen without just laser focus. Unless you are willing to say, I'm healing is my rabbit, and proportionately more of my focus, more of my time, more of my effort is focused on healing. And if you do that, you tend to get better every time. And that's not alternative medicine. That's just human physiology. You give the body what it needs to heal, and it does, like magic.
And more on focus as a finite resource. We've talked before about the Eisenhower Matrix, where you have what's urgent and important, and then you have the urgent and non-important. So if you think of 4 boxes, you've got urgent and important, urgent and non-important, non-urgent and important, and then non-urgent and non-important. And if you think of 100% of your resources, how many things go to the urgent and not important? Like, it's in front of your face, so you feel like you have to deal with it now, but overall it doesn't move the needle forward. It doesn't move you to your goals, to your ideal self. It comes up most for me personally as an example when I think of my family. Important but not urgent. And so oftentimes the urgent and unimportant can scooch out or take the place of time that I would want to spend with my family, which is important but not urgent. And I think those 2 boxes of that graph tend to be the most in conflict, and could benefit you if you wanted to spend more time looking at where you are spending your time in the urgent but not important, where your ideal self, the you that you are calling into your life, really wants to be with that important but not urgent piece. And I've seen this play out with my parents, the amount of time that I spend with them and vice versa. Grandparents, same thing. They're very important to me, but not as urgent as the day-to-day workload that comes up. And some of that workload is very urgent and very important. Others of it, not as important, but feels more urgent. And so it's just really looking at where my focus is, because it is a finite resource.
All right, Amber. So let's tie a bow on it. I know that the format's been a little bit different than what it normally is, but if there is a focus-related behavior that our audience can try this week to get better at, what would you recommend?
I feel like a broken record.
Okay, hold on. Eating beans is not going to help with focus. All right. This is the one time that increasing the amount of beans in your diet does not.
I don't know. You could focus.
Hey,
excuse me, sir. You could focus on that first meal of the day being high in fiber and higher in protein for satiety.
I feel like beans for breakfast is a little bit of hard sell. I mean, like, it's not unhealthy, but it is. The American palate is
I have done it
a little bit. I've done it too. I think actually the English
omelets are a great
breakfast.
place to get it in there.
Okay, but it's not beans.
Okay. But with focus, I think it is taking time, especially in the morning, and sometimes it's also doing an assessment in the evening, kind of what you were speaking to earlier. But in the morning, looking at how you want to spend your day. Like today would be a success if this was my mindset, my heart set, my focus, my identity alignment, and so looking at that, if this happened, then this day is a win for me. Identifying what that is, having awareness of that. And then the next step would be, how do I ensure that happens? How do I ensure that happens in best case scenario to worst case scenario? And not spending a lot of time in this space, because oftentimes you don't have time. You got to hit the ground running, so to speak. But looking at that, and then at the end of the day, looking at, did you do it? What was in the way if you didn't? And how could you mitigate what was in the way if it didn't happen? What could you do next time? And then how do you ensure to do that?
Right. So that was another episode of the Diabetes Podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you again next week. Thanks for listening to the Diabetes Podcast. If today resonated, try one focus builder this week. Each morning, name a single action that would make the day a win for your health, and bookend it with a quick evening check-in. No judgment, just data and gentle course correction. Remember, healing happens in 24-hour blocks. Simpler beats more. Regulation unlocks behavior change. And taking care of your body isn't selfish. It's an act of resistance. If you enjoyed this episode, please take the time to give it a like and leave a review. This really helps to promote and sustain this free podcast and get the word out to the millions of people worldwide that are struggling with type 2 and pre-diabetes, letting them know that remission is possible if you take action today. And if you have additional questions or need additional support, reach out to us at support@empowerdiabetes.com. Until next time, take courage. You can do this, and we can help.